All right.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, here we go. I'm Brandt with Strategic Financial Solutions, and along with me today is Toni Stone. Toni is our Senior Account Executive. We are in the business of helping people retire, and we do that through working with over 75 businesses headquartered in Eastern Iowa, serving over 25,000 employees among those businesses. And Toni is the senior member of our corporate team, working with our plan sponsors. Very likely the company that you work with is one of our plan sponsors. So we're glad you showed up today. We're glad you tuned in, and we're excited to spend a few minutes with you today. The title of our workshop is Empowering Women, Financial Fitness and Retirement Readiness. So you may ask, why is Brian talking? What qualifies him for this topic? So I have a mom, like many of you, most of you. I have a sister and a wife. So I met my mom and my sister shortly after I was born. My wife I met in high school, and what I've learned from them over the years and how to treat women. Number 1, be gracious. Number 2, be respectful. And number 3, don't make any assumptions. So as Toni and I were working through this presentation and trying to figure out, okay, what topics should we cover? I have the opportunity to work in the area of financial planning every day with participants in our 401k plans and help them sort out their future and what that looks like and what goals they want to set and how we make all the math work. And naturally, through that process, I work with men and women. And it's hard to draw any conclusions among that. Sometimes the husband is dominant in the meeting and sometimes the wife, and doesn't really matter to me. It's typically one or the other that kind of takes the lead and the other that sits on the sidelines. What's unique, though, from a gender standpoint, is there's three items or considerations that are unique to women. And that's where we're going to start. No matter where you are in life, there's certainly 3 considerations that are going to be unique to the gender, the female gender. So Toni's going to get us started with that.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian. Before we dive into that, I was reading a lot of stats before we got started, and a remarkable stat that I thought was important to point out that's happening right now in the marketplace is in the next 20 years, 84 trillion assets are going to be transferred from the generation who owns them now to the next 2 generations below them. 84 trillion assets. 30 trillion of those assets are going to be dominated by women investors, by us. Hopefully I get a portion of that. A lot of those women will be establishing wealth for the first time, getting comfortable with growing their wealth for the first time, gaining confidence in investing, being good stewards of those accounts and those monies. But we all know as women, we're stewards of many other things, stewards of our families, caregivers of, generations above and below us. And as women, we think very holistically about our lives, about our families, about the organizations we work with and that we're a part of. So the thing with women investors is there's a level of confidence getting and education that we need to set in place to have a financial plan, to know where we're going, to really put our arms around holistically all of those components. And what we do know about women as investors is we're very thoughtful. We're thoughtful in where we want our money to go, how we want it to grow, and what we want to do with it. And we take our time making decisions, but once we do make decisions, we generally stick with them and stick with the plan, which does make us really good investors. So that's kind of where we wanted to start, was just helping everyone gain confidence and education and some good tools and resources and skill sets to really put you on a good path if you're not already there, or help you stay the course if you have created your financial plan. So we like this picture of the gals rucksacking because we all know as women we carry a heavy burden a lot of the time. So one of the biggest components of creating your financial plan, and one of the challenges and obstacles we need to overcome as women, is we typically live longer, outlive our male counterparts, on average by 5 years. So that means we need our money to last longer, right? So longevity is the biggest obstacle for us to overcome. We've got family in here because, as I talked about, many, generations above and below us need us, and we are generally the caregivers for our kids and our aging and elderly parents. And then there's obviously wage and job gaps to overcome. I believe that that's, not such an issue anymore. Women out um, are on more college campuses right now than men are. So I believe in general, student loan debt for women is higher, which means we need to go after those big jobs. So really setting yourself up for a good future.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of the last comment that Toni made there, I attended a workshop. Many of you have maybe heard of this, Iowa Women Lead Change. It's been going on for about a decade in the corridor, and I know they go to other spots in Iowa as well. And I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, they had a men's track where us guys could sign up for a morning, and there was a couple dozen of us there just to learn how to work better with women and so on. And the one thing that I learned at that session that I'll never forget is in general, and again, my mom and sister and wife say don't make assumptions or generalizations, but this person said it. So in general, on a job description, a female isn't going to apply unless they feel like they meet all the qualifications. So let's take a CFO job, for example, and let's say it says college degree, 10 years of relevant experience, CPA preferred, and so on. I might look at that job description and say, well, I've been in financial service for 20 years. I have a college degree, and I would apply for it and try to talk myself into it. Where in general, again, the speaker said, a gal will look at that and say, okay, it looks like I need to work on my CPA, or it's not even worth applying. So if there's a takeaway, I would encourage, if there's something out there, go after it, as Toni said, because you never know what you might qualify for. So. All right, so moving on, the way we're going to structure this talk today is just walk through 5 milestones in life or 5 key events that may have already happened to you in life, or you're looking forward to this in the future, and maybe just 1 or 2 takeaways that can help you along your journey to financial freedom. So on the screen there, most of them speak for themselves. Change of plans, that would be just kind of something unexpected. You lose your spouse, you become divorced, something else happens in your life, and it's a wake-up call to just kind of relook at everything and reorganize. So we'll walk through those. All right, so starting with first job, I'll share a little bit more. I have 4 sons, 2 still in high school, 1 in the workforce a couple years, 1 graduating this May. So my oldest had his first job start coming up on 2 years now. And it was kind of fun to go through that. I'm going to be making this amount of money, and it really seems like a lot. But that first conversation about Social Security taxes, federal withholding, state benefits, all of that. So really that first job, just organizing, how are you going to get to work? How are you going to get groceries? Where are you going to live? And oh, by the way, as Toni mentioned, student loan debt, how is that going to be taken care of? Because that's going to kick in eventually. So just organizing those first things. Toni, yeah, there we go. And so it's really a conversation back to when I volunteered for junior achievement and sat in the 2nd grade classroom and talked about this is a need and this is a want. So again, just kind of reassessing that as a young adult of what's my bare minimum that I need to take care of food, shelter, and clothing, and then what are my wants and how do I prioritize that? And then on the next screen, that first job has a smorgasbord, a buffet of benefits to sort through. And most people graduating college have no idea what half the things on the list mean. So before I dive into that, Toni, was there comments you had on the other 2 slides?
No, not necessarily. When we get to this one, I think the biggest takeaway here is just as a young person starting your first job, all of this stuff is really intimidating. And again, educating yourself and really getting into the weeds, digging in, and whether it's sitting down with your HR, director or benefits manager, or working with one of, the financial advisors, if it's someone here at SFS or someone else that may be assigned, really looking under the hood and understanding fully all of your benefits. I think that's a really big obstacle as we get started. And I think it can be a little intimidating.
Yeah, and if I could prioritize that list, just like I did with my oldest and other friends of family and people getting first jobs, one thing that we know through experience and perspective is that at retirement, which seems a long ways away from your first job, at retirement, most people want to have the same lifestyle that they had during their working years, be involved in the same groups and organizations, live in the same house in the neighborhood, and vacation with the same people and things like that. So spending doesn't go down in retirement. Oftentimes it actually goes up. However, you're not saving into a 401k like you are during your working years. So the rule of thumb is 80%. Okay, so if you had 100,000 of household income your last year of working, you're going to want 80,000 a year into retirement. And that's because it's a lifetime of Saturdays, right? It's extra time. So if we work that back to a 22-year-old or 23-year-old starting their first job, I can also tell you if you start saving 10% your first working year and save 10% your entire career, you will easily be able to replace that 80% of income. Just the time value of money and compound interest and everything else. So if there's a takeaway to first job milestone, it's save 10%. The other thing I would say is if your employer offers a Roth contribution in the 401k, absolutely best decision to do that. So again, young, 10% Roth is the way to go. The other thing I would point out, if you're not on your parents' health insurance, I'm not sure whoever made it okay for people to stay on your health insurance till 26, but it's tough on the parents. But anyway, so if they have their own health insurance, HSA is a great way to put more money away pre-tax as well. So those are kind of the two things that jump off the page as good starters for that first job is 401k, 10%, and the Roth provision. All right. Moving on to you fall in love and want to start that future together. Any thoughts on this, Toni?
Talk about money. First things first, whether you're going to share expenses, keep separate accounts, what your goals are, what debt you're carrying into the relationship or your marriage. Believe it or not, family therapists say that those couples who create a plan together and talk about their plan and reevaluate it and adjust over time, it actually is really healthy for a long-term relationship. So I think it helps cement a really good, solid relationship. So talk about money for women. It can be emotional, but if you take the emotion out of it and have a financial professional sit down with you and really act as a mediator sometimes, right, Brian? Kind of a marriage counselor from time to time. If people have different opinions of how they want their money to be handled. So there are resources out there to help you kind of get that established.
Yeah, and in the good news department, you're sharing expenses. So you're kind of picking up a lifelong roommate in there as well. So it's easier to have one apartment than two. So I'm going to go to the next screen there, Toni. Yeah, so just to echo what Toni said about having the conversation and however your emotion and your family and your relationship, but definitely have the conversation. How much debt are you bringing into the marriage? What are your savings habits? And hopefully they're 10% or more. Certainly there's some financial documentation that needs to be taken care of as far as beneficiaries on each other's accounts and joint accounts and a will and things like that. The one tidbit that I would say here, the takeaway would be whether you have joint accounts or separate accounts, and I work with couples, the majority have joint accounts, but I certainly have clients that keep everything separate. If you do have joint accounts, I would encourage there to be a his account and a her account as well. And that's for hobbies and fun and each other's birthday presents and anniversary and Christmas and things like that. I picked that up later in life. I was playing euchre with another couple and just talking about playing poker and things like that. And oh yeah, Chris has his own account. We started as best thing that we ever did. So driving home with my wife that night, I'm like, what do you think? She's like, I love it. Then I don't have to, you do what you want with that money and I'll have my own and so on. So it doesn't need to be a huge amount, and agree on how much goes in. If it's $100 a paycheck or whatever your number is, agree on what goes in. And then that this takes care of a lot of things. I laugh as I was looking at this when my wife and I first got married in the late 90s. We had a $50 rule. So if we were going to spend more than $50 on something, we wanted to talk about it. I don't think we could make it till Monday on that one anymore on $50. But whatever system works for you and your marriage, the important thing is to have that communication and have a system and an agreement. And then finally, if you're going to roll the toilet paper this way or that way, get that figured out. And toothpaste. And I did some research. The right way to squeeze toothpaste is from the middle and go ahead and leave the cap off. And right, Toni? No?
Oh my God. My heart just started beating a million miles a minute. Good one.
Thank you. All right. So oftentimes the next phase, and sometimes it happens before marriage, but starting a family and the holy cow, what did we just do? And where's the book on this and the playbook? Because waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning and whose turn is it and all of that. So, from a financial standpoint, I'll cover that first and then tip it over to Toni on that. From a financial standpoint, certainly a really good time to say, all right, what's our life insurance look like? Because I can't do this on my own with one income and things like that. And we brought this baby into this world. We want to make sure that, she grows up in a good environment and things like that. So a quick life insurance review is super important. Oftentimes it's very popular to get a 529 plan, which is a college savings account started. Again, 18 years of compound growth. Any little bit that you put in that first year is going to be a multitude higher. One nice thing about 529 plans, because it's hard to know if your baby is going to go to college in 18 years, is now if there's money left in a 529 plan, when they get to a certain age, I think it's 25, they can convert that to a Roth IRA and allow that to continue to grow tax-free all the way to retirement. So it's a nice little tweak in that program that just came out last year. It kind of takes that consideration away of, if they don't go to college, what do I do with it, or would I pay penalties? So again, take a look at your insurance and maybe start a 529 plan. Toni?
Yeah, I mean, what I would add here is just these are the years where expenses are coming out left and right. And I think one of the biggest takeaways is to just really keep that emergency savings fund. Don't dip into that if you don't have to. And then by all means necessary, don't dip into your retirement savings. So keep that as kind of the holy grail and really try to plan around that. I had mentioned earlier just that, I feel like things are becoming a lot more equitable on the home front. And an example of that, I look at my group of girlfriends that I went to college with, there's 10 of us, and then dial it back a generation. And my mom has 9 sisters. So there's 10 girls in her family. So a pretty good apples to apples comparison. And when you look at those two different groups of women, my mom's generation, 8 of those 10 women were either stay-at-home moms, maybe had a part-time job, definitely were not outpacing their husbands or their partners or spouses in, wages and income and job lifestyle. You flip it to my girlfriends in our generation, so just a generation away, and it's the complete opposite of that. Of those 10 women in my generation, 2 of the husbands are stay-at-home dads. 3 of the women are directors or, high ups in C-suite females at their organizations. And and a lot of them breadwinners of their family. So I do think just, from a overall perspective, things are leveling out. We are, but getting on the same playing field, but, just really understanding how our finances and expenses work and being kind of an independent, you know, thinker on our own as females is what's important.
All right, then there's the next season of life. So this is, dance and club sports and all of that. We have mom's taxi there, but as Toni said, more and more dads are the stay-at-home parent, especially with the C-suite wives that we work with. So, during this season, Toni touched on it, and I'll reiterate, absolutely positively don't stop saving. Always make sure that you're setting money aside for your future through all of these seasons. So if it comes down to spring break, that's a whole nother topic. Whoever invented spring break, I'd like to choke them, because it's 2 weeks leading up to spring break. Where are you going on spring break? And it's just this whole thing. And where did you go? And anyway, I just think about all that money that went on spring break and what it'd be worth in the future. But that's the nerd in me. So anyway, resist the temptation to just spend everything on your kids' time and money, because eventually your kids are going to get out of the house and be on their own job, and you'll look at your spouse and still want to be able to spend time with them, and you're going to look at your account balances and say, okay, now we're behind. So anything you can do to just continue to save 10% or more in your 401k, once that's full, save it somewhere else, and just keep putting those little acorns away for the future, so that you can be financially set and have a good, solid foundation for the grandkids that will come someday. So, and then as Toni touched on, work or home, there's no right answer. The right answer is what feels best for your household, but don't sacrifice savings for that, right? So always make sure that you're always just putting a little bit away every paycheck, whether that's 1 or 2 paychecks in your household. All right, so now we have a photo from Failure to Launch, a great movie, The Empty Nesters. So I am getting very close to that phase, a couple years away, and very much looking forward to it. Not trying to rush this season away, but looking forward to that time of our life. So from a financial standpoint, it's a great time to power save. This is when we see people putting 30,000 or more into their 401k using catch-up contributions, max funding in the HSA, other savings plan. These are those last 5 to 10, maybe 15 years that you have to earn an income to set yourself up for retirement. This is also the time where we have the most engagement and activity with our clients. Is typically, they get to their 50s, they're like, okay, we got the kids off to college, got that checked off. Where am I at? How am I looking towards my goal? So it's a great time to just check in. Here's where I want to be. Here's where I am. How do I get there? Highly motivated, short period of time to get there. In the middle there, it says Oreo cookies. So you might wonder what that means, other than it's lunchtime and we're getting hungry. The Oreo cookie is, you may still have those money suckers, those kids hanging around. They're on your health insurance. Maybe they're on your cell phone bill. I'm speaking personally here. Maybe they're on your car insurance. You go on spring break, they tag along and want you to pay for everything. So you still might have some lingering expenses from the kids in their 20s. At the same time, your parents are starting to have more need for attention, whether that's doctor's visits or maybe they're needing some help around the house, yard work, things like that. So you're kind of the white middle inside the Oreo cookie, where you're getting pulled from each direction. So it's more of awareness that you still have to prioritize your own financial freedom. Otherwise, eventually the kids are going to be off and on their own, and your parents, won't need you as much anymore. So it's going to be you and your retirement. So just want to make sure we prioritize that. Toni?
Yeah, and I'll just spin it from the female perspective because we generally speaking are the caregivers of our elder parents, and as they age and need more help and assistance, I think the big takeaway is to try to get them to talk about their finances. It may be difficult to get them to open up. They don't want to burden you with, you know, their situation. Especially a couple generations above may just not be comfortable talking money or talking finances. But I think it gives everyone a really good peace of mind. Unexpected things happen. I finally got my parents to sit down and do some of the planning. And, I'm not an expert in that area, but I helped connect them with an expert. I know lots of other folks, friends of mine and coworkers have brought their parents in and can kind of sit with them with the financial professional, help create a plan, then they know and are involved in the plan. And it gives everybody good peace of mind that things are kind of checked off the list. You can, know where to find certain documents, know who's appointed for certain things. I think that's a really big takeaway on this slide is helping your parents from that perspective.
Yeah, and to build on that, as Toni said, unexpected things happen. Whether it's you become a widow, you become single again, a job loss, a health crisis. So really, any of those, hopefully you already know after today's talk is figure out where everything is, every username and password, every account that you have. If that's not normally your jam, make it your goal this weekend or next. It's going to be crappy weather this weekend anyway. So just so that you know where everything is in case something happens unexpected like this. And then, naturally in our business, we're typically a phone call when this happens or a visit that something happened. And I can tell you, um, don't do anything fast, right? So first off, find somebody that you trust. If you don't have anybody in mind, ask a friend, right? So the best financial advisors don't have a TV show or an ad out there. They have full schedules because they're good with their clients. So ask a friend who they work with and get referred to a financial advisor or two or three and check them out. But once you find that person that you're comfortable with and you trust, just take it real slow. I've worked with several widows over the years, and we just take one thing off the list and get it taken care of, and then maybe 3 or 4 weeks later we'll tackle the next thing and just take it real slow and get everything organized, and don't make any big decisions at least for a year until things settle in and you kind of have a chance to reassess what you want your future to look like. Same thing with divorce. Obviously, there's some urgent things that need to be taken right away, but take the time that you need to get things reorganized and back in order, and then move forward from that. Anything to add there, Toni?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. Earlier, you had mentioned, when you meet with people, a husband and a wife, most times one or the other of them generally take the lead in the planning part of the process. So if it's the husband, that's a-okay. However, 95% of women at some point will be their family's primary financial decision maker. So at some point in your life, that's all of us women, we're going to be the financial decision maker of our families. So if they're taking the lead, that's fine, but you still you want to have all of those pieces of the puzzle together because God forbid something happen. Life is not a straight line to retirement or to the end. And so things happen. Just make sure you've got yourself covered there.
All right. Now we're to the retirement party, and look how happy she is. She is just dreaming about what she's going to do next week. If you look a little closer, she also might be a little worried. What we found is one of the most important things is purpose, right? So our happiest retirees have found something that gets them out of bed most days, right? So not everything's utopia or perfect, but we can do all the financial planning and make sure things are in order. And I can nod my head, yep, green light, everything looks great. But then that's the science of retirement. And then the art of retirement is finding that thing that keeps you going and keeps you excited. We found that there's seasons in retirement. So if I try to draw an analogy to our seasons. It typically starts in the summer, right? People retire and they have their list of vacations they want to go on and spend time with their grandkids and lunch with friends and you know, trips and family get-togethers. So there's kind of those go-go months or years that are early in retirement, and we kind of call that the summer of retirement. And then after about a year or two, becomes autumn, and you know, maybe it's not as it's tiring to travel, and kind of a season of loss. Maybe some of their work friends they don't talk to as much anymore, and just kind of figuring out, okay, I've kind of gotten through my bucket list. Now what? And honestly, you know, potentially some sadness and longing and missing out happen, and that's the winter of retirement where you know, just kind of reflecting and maybe trying some things, whether it's volunteering at a food shelter or a pickleball or whatever it might be, volunteering activities, maybe going back to work part-time, maybe starting a business. So kind of that trial and error season occurs in the winter of retirement. And then finally, that purpose is found. And a lot of times it involves helping others, you know, whether that's through church or volunteer, whatever it might be, just finding that purpose of, okay, this is my jam. This is what gets me out of bed every day. And once they find that, that's the spring of their retirement. And that's when they're the happiest and the most joyous. So if you can start that process before you even retire and figure out, okay, what do those years look like? It's not watching TV. It's not, you know, whatever it might be. It's something that's a little bit more exciting. So I encourage you my takeaway on this one, as you can imagine, getting all the financial house in order, but then figuring out what that purpose is.
Yeah, and this is what we're all striving for, right? We want to get to retirement. I read a stat that 25% of all women have done zero financial planning or thought about their future. So this is just, I think, a plug or my plug to say, use your resources if you haven't created that financial plan. And then along the way, obviously adjust, reevaluate. There's different life stages. Your risk tolerance may change. Tax strategies may change. So create that plan and evaluate and stick to it.
Nice. So you do have a little help along the way. So in retirement, again, we do financial planning. So we have hundreds and actually thousands of examples of financial plan. And just to give you an idea of where the money is going to come from in retirement, typically, if we figure out here's your needs, wants, and wishes in retirement, here's how much everything costs, about half of it can come from Social Security. In the the median financial plan I do, half of it's going to come from Social Security. About a fourth, so 25%, maybe 30% will come from the 401k plan. And then the other fourth is other savings. So savings done outside the employer, things like that. So again, just to give you an idea, saving that 10% in the 401k, paying your FICA tax, you're 3/4 of the way there. And then as you start reaching limits and things, doing some things outside of your plan are important as well. But you do have some partners in there. Then there's healthcare. Realistically, the biggest expense you'll have in retirement, especially near the end, is all the healthcare expenses. So we do have the government program of Medicare, but anything you can set aside in HSA plans, you don't have to put it in the HSA and spend it in the same year. You can let that account balance grow. And now there's programs out there where you can invest, over a certain amount in an HSA plan. So I would encourage you to start putting money aside for co-payments, deductibles, part of your Medicare premium. You can use HSA accounts. It's the only financial instrument that's legal that I can think of that is triple tax-free. So you get to deduct what you put in an HSA, it grows tax-free, and you take it out tax-free. It's the only thing I can think of, again, that's legal, that's tax-free.
And I would just add, we started kind of with the longevity, metric there that generally speaking, women are going to outlive their male counterparts or their spouses, which then means, the surviving spouse is most likely going to incur all the costs of, assisted living, nursing home, yet you're going to be living on less expenses without your spouse's Social Security or their full benefits. So really saving for that extra amount of time and that longevity um, is one of the biggest challenges that we have as women to overcome.
Yeah, and financial plan. So it can be as simple as Brian said, I need 80% of my income in retirement and I make X now. This is what that needs to be, and start tracking towards that goal and what that equates to. A good rule of thumb for that is take it times 20, and that's how much money you need to accumulate. Okay, so make it relatively simple. Let's say you need 30,000 a year in retirement. That means you need an account, or you need to supplement 30 above and beyond Social Security. You need an account with 600,000 in there. So 20 times 30,000 is 600,000. The way I got there is I know we can pull out about 5% a year safely out of your nest egg to help supplement retirement without it going away. It can sustain about a 5% withdrawal rate. So it can be that simple. Or on the next page, Toni, we can get as in-depth as reading books, listening to podcasts, buying financial planning software, tracking everything in Quicken, or working with an advisory firm like SFS or someone else to work on a financial plan. We happen to use Money Guide Pro. We find that it's very user-friendly, it's interactive, and our clients have access to it. So they can check in periodically and see how their progress is. But there's other great resources and tools out there. What we want you to do is just take ownership in it and take that first step towards improving you actually took the first step by logging in today, but the second step of taking some action, and I would say that starts with knowing where you are today and then starting to think about the future and then engaging in some resources. I know we're going to follow up with the attendees with some links and a list of resources to help get you started. But in addition to that, feel free to reach out to us directly. The numbers are on the page or through your employer, or scan the QR code. What did I miss, Toni?
I don't think anything. I think we could go on, and I think we've already gone over our time. Hopefully we gave you a few tidbits or thoughts and ideas, ways to, help control your money and not let your money control you. I think that's one of the big takeaways here. And just as women, feel empowered and confident in your financial plan and your holistic picture. So like Brian said, we're here if you need anything.
Great summary, Toni. Thank you again, everyone.